How does one describe the most amazing adventure we have ever experienced?
It's as challenging as trying to capture a 6-day climb in just a few minutes.
On December 27, 2012, 23 people gathered at Toronto's Pearson Airport to board a flight to Amsterdam en route to Moshi, Tanzania. 3 others traveled to meet us from Europe and Australia.
The purpose of our trek was to raise funds for the Sanfilippo Children's Research Foundation in a quest to find a cure for Sanfilippo syndrome by climbing Africa's highest elevation, Mount Kilimanjaro.
United simply by a connection with our family and a determination to help fund a cure for Sanfilippo syndrome, most of the climbers were no more than acquaintances or even strangers to each other. Our youngest were 20, our eldest was 65. We had solo climbers, brothers, couples, whole families, and even a Sanfilippo researcher from Adelaide, Australia.
Together, we raised over $200,000, making this one of our most successful fundraisers ever. In tackling Kilimanjaro, we didn't just battle the sheer vastness of the mountain, which, at more than 19,000 feet, is the world's tallest freestanding peak. We experienced just about everything the mountain could throw at us, including rain, sleet, hail, thunderstorms, heavy fog, and snowstorms.
We also battled lack of sleep and proper nutrition, foreign medication none of us had ever ingested before, the effects of oxygen deprivation, flu, and altitude sickness, and too many carb meals with too few desserts.
Mount Kilimanjaro took us far deeper physically, mentally, and emotionally than any of us had ever experienced with our comfortable lives in Canada. We couldn't have done it without a lot of courage, timely sense of humor, and especially the deep bond of friendship that formed between us that only an adventure like this could bring about.
So many things inspired us. Stunning scenery on the lower slopes in a tropical rainforest where we heard exotic birds and saw colobus monkeys, gentle slopes with alpine flowers and unique giant lobelia, steep hikes through the heathlands of savanna and giant heather.
Our amazing porters were strong and helpful, carrying huge loads in nothing but flip-flops and wearing little more than their smiles. Most inspiring of all was witnessing incredible teamwork in the face of adversity. Here's just one example.
On our first day, torrential rains in the rainforest discouraged 15 porters from showing up to carry our supplies to the first base camp. So several of us did not get our duffel bags that contained warm, dry clothes, jackets, sleeping bags, toiletries, and medication. Without hesitation, several members in our group shared what we needed. We even shared malaria and altitude sickness medication. Selfless acts of generosity and sacrifice and working as a team proved to be essential to beating the mountain.
Many of us lost sleep in the sub-zero conditions at night, suffered stomach flu and diarrhea, draining us of much-needed energy. We experienced lack of hydration, insufficient food, and pouring rain each day. And the 26 of us had to share one latrine, although we had ordered 3.
Luckily, the only major disappointment was that not everyone was able to make it to the summit. 19 of our 26 climbers reached Uhuru Peak on summit day.
My right leg is really sore. It actually doesn't really work anymore. But
Yeah.
that's par for the course. But at least,
But you got 2 days in and
Yeah.
you made it to Shira Plateau.
at least we attempted it. We tried it. We made an effort, and that's what counts.
Together we shared many unforgettable experiences, such as a memorable New Year's Eve complete with a stunning sunset, a view of Mount Nero in the distance, millions of brilliant stars, a stunning view of Kilimanjaro's peak, which seemed fluorescent against the moonlit night sky, and a candlelit dinner in the mess tent.
Happy New Year, honey.
Boy,
Good morning.
this brings bonding with nature a whole new level.
You got that right.
On New Year's Day morning at Shira Hut Base Camp, we took our only complete group picture on the mountain, and then we began our 15-kilometer hike, one of our most difficult and memorable. We ascended steeply, feeling the effects of altitude as our guides cried, "Pole, pole," which means slowly, slowly. All around us there were lava rocks, huge boulders, and no vegetation. Heavy rain began around 11 a.m.
We ascended to 4,500 meters along a rocky path to the lava tower, most of us weak and physically exhausted from the effects of altitude and shortness of breath. Yet the scenery was stunning in the valley and on the western breach of the mountain. By late afternoon, we arrived at the comforting site of the Barranco camp. In the distance was Kibo Peak, with its glaciers reflecting in the sun.
Despite another cold night, we rested for our ascent up the Great Barranco Wall, climbing to an oxygen-poor altitude of almost 4,000 meters. Encountering this very steep, intimidating, and exhausting wall was our most frightful day. After a 3-hour climb to the top of the wall, we began a grueling 13-kilometer hike, traversing many hills and sharp drops. We encountered our worst storm about 3 hours from our campsite. Heavy rain created streams beneath our feet. We were startled by the loudest clap of thunder any of us had ever heard.
We later learned this lightning strike tragically took the life of an experienced climber from Ireland, just behind our group. Several of us were able to take refuge from the storm in caves along the side of the mountain. When the rain subsided, cold air moved in. We continued along the trail through barren landscapes to Barafu Camp, located on a windy ridge, all of us cold and wet, and a few of us suffering hypothermia.
By all accounts, this was our most difficult day. Tired, wet, cold, several of us skipped dinner and crawled into our sleeping bags, knowing that we only had a few hours to rest before our final ascent to the summit. At midnight, our guides woke us. As we unzipped our tents, we were disappointed to see that it was snowing, which meant the climb to the top would be even more challenging. Our wet boots were frozen. We pulled plastic bags over 2 layers of socks to keep our feet dry.
Wearing night lights on our foreheads, several layers of clothes, balaclavas, gloves, and boots, we were enchanted by the stream of bobbing, twinkling lights of other hikers' headlamps already moving toward the summit. At 1:10 a.m., we started the last leg of our journey to the top of Africa, our most mentally demanding hike of all. Our guides led the way through the dark night. There were no stars or moonlight to help us find our way, just our headlamps and the call of "Pole, pole" from our guides.
After 7 hours, many of us suffering headaches, nausea, and extreme diarrhea, we reached Stella Point, the rim of the crater on top of Kilimanjaro. We were surrounded by snow-covered rock and temperatures of -10 degrees Celsius, which is strange considering we're right on the equator. There we stopped to rest. We felt lightheaded from the altitude and then discouraged when we realized that we still had another 45 minutes and 200 vertical meters to walk before reaching Uhuru Peak, which means freedom in Swahili.
Finally, we reached the summit. The first thing we saw through the falling snow was the tall green signpost announcing the top of Kilimanjaro. I recognized Matthew Don, who was tying a string of prayer flags to the sign, which he had sold to raise money for the climb. For me, it was quite an emotional sight.
How do you feel?
It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
You made it.
For a lot of
But you
tears.
made it.
With a lot of help, with a lot of good people. We have such an awesome team.
Our spirits were as high as our elevation. We laughed, we cried, and we hugged. Our family made it to the summit with the inspiration of our dear Alyssa. Each day we took out this picture to give us motivation to just carry on. At this moment we felt so much emotion and love for her and all the Sanfilippo kids around the world for whom we did this climb.
Since visibility was poor and the oxygen level was only 40% that at sea level, we only stayed about 30 minutes at the summit. We gathered for a group picture and proudly held the banner that told the world that one more important cause had scaled this beautiful but frightful mountain. The impression of that brief moment in time will last our lifetimes.
The walk to the summit was extremely calming. A feeling came over me that is almost impossible to describe. I felt grateful, I felt happy, tearful, and really all I wanted to do was hug everybody.
I was so glad and honored to be part of the team, but even better was raising money for Sanfilippo research and explaining to donors what Sanfilippo is, bringing awareness to people who have never heard of it before. Being at the peak still seems like a dream. The friendship, the common misery, and the laughs we all shared.
While walking back along the rim, the sky suddenly cleared above us, revealing that we were way above the clouds. And the sight of the crater to our left and the glacier to our right, of bright, beautiful snow and ice, they were truly awesome sights.
On day 6, we awoke to a beautiful sunrise and hastily packed our belongings before embarking on a very icy descent over rocky paths, moving through 4 climate zones in just over 8 hours. Most agree that this was the most physically challenging segment of the trek, incredibly hard on our knees, ankles, and feet. Once everyone was off the mountain, we celebrated together. One of our climbers took the opportunity to salute our incredible porters by buying them a beverage.
Once everyone crossed through the gate at the base of the mountain, we loaded onto a bus to journey back to our hotel, where we gratefully enjoyed real beds and delicious food. While in Moshi, we visited a Tanzanian orphanage to donate the $2,500 raised at last year's Gala raffle. Dennis Ayotte summed up our visit best.
At the orphanage, when the kids showed me where they slept at night, 3 per bunk and at least 15 per room, I almost broke out in tears. I felt like I should do more for them.
Climbing Kili was a time to forge new friendships and watch them overcome obstacles. Ultimately, though, it was an opportunity to see conviction in action, especially the grit and perseverance of Elizabeth and Randall, that a small group of passionate, committed people can accomplish something so huge together. I was so happy to see Alyssa in the greeting line when we got off the plane.
While the climb was a challenging experience, the effort needed to reach the summit of Kilimanjaro pales in comparison to the uphill climb faced every day by so many Sanfilippo children and their families, and by our Sanfilippo researchers around the world who are tirelessly climbing their way to a cure.
To the 22 men and women who joined our family on this climb, and to each person and organization who encouraged us with financial support and prayers, we will be eternally grateful. A very sincere thank you. Because of your support, we are almost there.
Kilimanjaro, 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 Kilimanjaro,